What if there was a place where guests could be invited, where a whole system of things work together in a way that is separate from the outside world? What if there was a place made by one person that became so infamous that she changed the world about what the individuals developed that carried on the legacy of having their own Amenten and their own way of doing things that still stayed in the system? It's a magical world of taking the realistic from the world and making it, well, they're taking realistic people and they are putting them into an unrealistic world. In this video, I will be going in depth as to what the meaning of an Amenten actually is and how I came up with it when I was little. Because I may very well throw that word around in my videos. So I think that it's very, very important that I do this so that you understand this, because this is a big part of my entertainment and my occupation mentally growing up when I was little. And I think that it's very, very important for you to understand where I'm coming from with this and understand my whole philosophy behind it and all this kind of thing. So let's just get the basics out. I'm just going to get right into it. I'm not going to, do it. At some time, I do have planned to create several Oracle decks. And one of the decks is the Amenten Realm Oracle cards based off of the Amenten Realm. It has about the different places and situations, and it has the meaning of the cards in there with their spiritual interpretations. So one day it hopefully will be published. So I will be referring to that in this video that I made, sharing with you the inside scoop about what this is all about. So, the very, very first thing that you have to imagine is it's in my imagination. I came up with this. This is not a real thing. This is not a real thing. You live like you're an imagination in the Amenten realm. You live like you're in an imagination. Like in your imagination, you imagine that the characters are real and that they're with you in your life when they are not. So I kind of got ahead of myself a little bit there, but anyway. It's a fantasy. I think that this really, really developed during my progressed Saturn and Leo period between ages 7 and 15, which is actually not correct according to Google, because I found out that the progressed Saturn is not 7 years, but I'm thinking, how could that not be right? That so resonates with my life. And then now I'm all critical and, all that. So I'm just so shocked at that, why that wouldn't be realistic. But it is what it is. Facts are the facts. Like, otherwise, you don't feel Saturn at all, because I find that so resonates with my life. So I'm just so surprised at that. But anyway, during the progressed Saturn in Leo is a sign of showing off, being very performative, being in the center stage, being in the spotlight, being very creative. I was very, very creative. I was into acting. I was into playing characters. I was into being a teacher. I was being any role where I could, during that time period, be very, very, be very flamboyant and proud and noble in claiming my power, and be the boss, and just expressing this layer of qualities of pride, of being in charge, of wanting to be the leader. I was stepping into, and there's creative things. I was really stepping into the Leo, Saturn progressed Leo during that time period, and I was very, very dramatic. So I'm just astounded that it would be wrong that your progressed Saturn doesn't change signs every 7 years, because if I have to look at my life, it totally makes sense. It just totally makes sense. My progressed Saturn for the first 7 years in Cancer, my progressed Saturn for the next 7 years in, Leo. Just like the progressed moon is so accurate, why isn't the progressed Saturn also said, like, accurate like that, 7 years. I mean, I specifically heard Deborah Silverman say, the first astrologer I've ever followed, the progressed Saturn changes signs every 7 years. And I remember hearing that. I don't think I misheard it. That's what she said. I thought it was a Saturn return, but I found out that was something else. It happened every, Saturn, 7 years. And then I looked it up and it was like, that's not true. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me at all. That doesn't make sense because it makes sense in my life that, the way, I don't want to go on about that. Okay. So, I put on shows at that time, pretended to be other people, pretended to have all these characters that I'm going to, get into when I get into the Amenten. In 2015, I started pretending to be mad, like pretending, based it off of my 5th grade teacher experience. Started then acting, being very, very mad, being very, angry in ways very, very dramatic. And I had a lot of fun doing it. And this was a way to express myself in a unique way. Like, Leo is about creative self-expression. This was totally me at the time. And I filmed these videos. I didn't just play around when I did the Amenten. I filmed these videos because I wanted to keep it. The whole thing was a way of video making. And when I wrote this, it corrected me, called it sketches. I call it setches. S-E-T-C-H. It's going to be a lot of made-up words in this video. So, setches. Okay, there's setches. And AI is probably going to get it wrong if you do the ask feature, just like I got it wrong in another thing that I did. So AI is going to probably get some things wrong with this episode. But so anyway. To just hear me when I say these things, and the AI gives the content, but it's gonna probably mispronounce the names and get some things wrong. So, because this is all made up. It's like, the Lord of the Rings and the J.R.R. Tolkien, how he explained the whole, names and things like that. Like, it's all made up. And so this is a very complicated thing that may be kind of dry. It may be very, very dry for you to listen to, because I'm explaining all these things and all these elements that I've jotted down with the Amenten. So hopefully I will get through this in not an overwhelming amount of time, but it may be a very, very long episode. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So anyway, I call these things setches. And a lot of them, I started them and I stopped and I deleted them and etc. So I say from Blake Castle to expressor, which is a term I'm going to get into. But actually, I came up with that term in the Amenten, and I'll probably just fast forward to it now that I'm bringing it up. What I mean by expressor versus express versus express. The difference is you express something and you're just expressing it, like you're just sharing your feelings about it. Like how you express yourself. But express is like, I'm against this person. I'm against this thing. And I'm fighting. I'm using this fuel. Like we use things like other people, other sayings, or quotes, or memories, or concepts, or whatever, to express what we are trying to express, to really, really go against, what we are trying to fight up against. So it's a very, very against energy. So I think maybe I'll explain more on that later. I don't know. But it's like you're fighting this person. You're expressing why they're, wrong or why they're bad or whatever. I don't want to see comments saying, what does this mean? What does all this mean? You're making this up. Da, 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 da. I explain it in this video. I explain it all in this video. So I don't want to see comments like that underneath the video. Okay, so, all right. So, I'm just gonna fast forward because I just kind of preview these things, very, very carefully, and I'll go in depth on some of these because I've actually written out all of these. So this is going to be a long podcast, very, very long. In fact, I may have to pause it to take a break during it. I don't know, but I'm just kind of skipping to get to the most important parts. I'm reading through this. So how the Amenten came about. How it came about. I go into the backstory of it here, which I want to talk about. How did this whole thing come about? Well, the videos started with my dad filming them. And you can find them on my channel. You can, my dad was filming these videos. And, so my dad was filming these. I was playing around, very, very acting, very much, pretending to teach, like, we're going to go to this park and do this, or we're going to, go eat this at this place, or, whatever, and that's, how it began. So my dad recorded them, from the years 2010 to 2012. And I kind of feel like with these kind of things, I, used my dad instead of really appreciated him as a, as a family member. Like, I used him for my own, wants, needs, and, playing around, with him and getting him to do what I wanted him to do. Like, I used him. Okay. And a lot of it was discussed with imaginary people, the plans I made, and the other kinds of information. My dad would occasionally play the keyboard where I would have him do that, and I would sing. At this time, the Amenten wasn't fully formed yet. It wasn't official. It was just me playing around and teaching. But these were the beginnings of it. These were the origins of it. This was like the prehistory to ancient history kind of thing. This was the beginning of it. Now I think, I'm not sure about this, but I think I officially started this in September. Like, I officially claimed that I was doing the Amenten in September of 2013. That's when I started. That when I had a party with my family, food, music, all of that. Now, the one who started it all, the queen of it all, the leader of it all, her name, Julia Eskenroll. I'm going to spell out a lot of things in this video probably. Eskanrol. Julia Eskenroll. She was the one who founded and started the Amenten in the first place. Now, the story goes that, and there's, as you can probably tell by the picture in this video, this is how it began. It started in 1968. Some of this is kind of made up. Some of this is not accurate with the math and how old people are. This is all made up, okay? So, okay, anyway. It started in 1968 when Julia Eskenroll was just 16 years old at the time. And she went to Lawrence Welk show, which is a performance about, Lawrence Welk. There's, bands and people singing and playing and all these kind of songs like that. It's kind of a dated show now, but they still play it on PBS. It's a realistic show. Okay, it's a real thing. So that's the thing, is a lot of these things are real, but I put them into this made-up world, which is the Amenten. So a lot of this is going to be me reading stuff and then discussing it as I go, because otherwise I would just be here forever and I couldn't memorize all this information. It's just a lot. It is a lot. I put a lot into this Oracle deck, which is not published yet, but hopefully someday it will be. So anyway, she went to a Lawrence Welk performance and noticed that the players in the band were fairly young at age. This may not be true, but this is how I make it up to be. Like the performers like in their teens or in their early 20s, let's just say. They discovered, wait a second, I'm skipping. Piles, I'm not going to keep covering up for these things, okay? Just like, did J.R.R. Tolkien cover up for all the made-up things in his Lord of the Rings? I don't think that he did, so I'm not going to do that, okay? I'm just going to explain it as it is, okay? Pyle Sunday, or Edward Esconroll, as his name was, which was her husband that she married, was playing in the band. Julia Esconroll got to meet him after the show was over. They discovered that they had a lot in common, like they shared a lot of things in common with each other. They had similar interests and all those kind of things with each other. From that moment on, they started connecting. They started having these connections. They started going on dates together. Just like, a couple would. Like, you don't just marry, the day you meet each other. You get to know each other. You go on dates. You do all those kind of things. And doing all kinds of other kind of fun activities with each other. I kind of use a colloquialism in that part of the thing, but anyway. They thought it was a good idea that they invite people into their houses to talk and get to know them from, all over, from America, whatever. That's how it began. They wanted to get to know people. They wanted to start something where they wanted to sit down with people, invite them over to their houses, contact them, and find some way of interviewing them to understand their story, to understand about them. Because this is the whole idea around the Amenten, is inviting guests in and focusing on the guest. They reached out to all kinds of people and set up interviews that would be all about them. They both had a desire to get to know people that caught their interest in person, that they were probably attracted to, like people that, well, that goes deeper, but people that caught their interest, like people they were interested in, maybe they were attracted to, intellectually attracted to, maybe they were just interested in the person in general and they wanted to learn more about the person. The interviews would be recorded so they could refer back to the experience. Some of the interviews went deep, where Julia had wrong spelling, gave them a house tour of her house, and went out to eat that evening with them, like had a celebration and went to a restaurant with them, usually to celebrate, to have dinner with them and get to know them and further get to know them. The interactions got deeper and deeper with them. They got so deep that the guests stayed overnight with Pyle Sunday and Julia Esconroll, as they wanted to get to know them as well as possible. I'll proofread this before publishing, most likely. They wanted to get to know them as well as possible. Well, you're just kind of getting to know the guest as much as possible with the Amenten. You're kind of sucking out everything that you can about this person. But how would they get people to come to their house and do what they wanted them to do? Because you could invite certain people after a while, but eventually, who's going to come to the house? Like, people have lives to live. They have other things to do in their lives. Like, we have to be realistic about that. You can't just summon people at their beck and call to come to your house and talk to you. So they ran into this problem, so they wanted to fix the problem. It actually happened that Julia and Edward, nicknamed Pyle Sunday, were very rich. Or they became very rich. However, life wasn't always like this. They started their relationship with living on a cabin on wheels. When I was younger, I saw videos on cabins and wheels, and I was very, very attracted to them. I wanted to live like I had this vision of being a teenager living on a cabin and wheels, so that's how this started. And then it turned to them living in a mansion in Phoenix, Arizona, and they had a name for this house. And I found it in a YouTube video a long, long time ago. I can't find the video. I cannot find the video at all. I remember faintly what it looks like in my mind, but I just cannot find the video to that house. It's just so disappointing. I cannot trace back where that video is. But the house that they called is Arizona Paradise. That's the name that they gave. The house had many great features, which included a movie theater. It included a tennis court and a snack bar and many other rooms in the house. They were rich enough to also own a private jet. Like, it's very, very typical for rich people to own this. One day in the middle of 1980, as they were flying over the ocean, they came across a massive continent that was unrecognizable because it was fairly new at the time, starting in 1969. The island was like anything they had ever seen before. The island, they found out, was called Joka. Joka. This is not a joke. This is a real thing that they actually found out. The country had a blend between Italian, French, Ecuadorian, and Indian cultures and cuisine. Like, the people were combined by race, like all these things. However, the island was very, very advanced technologically. It had technological innovations that was beyond 1969, like into the future technological innovations. From flying cars to cloning machines, like cloning people. And this is how they found an ethical way to clone people. Like, it is unethical to do this. But they were skeptical of this, but they found, and I put myself into this myth, like, I was skeptical of this, but I found when I was playing the Amenten role that this was ethical to do. And maybe I will explain that. And if I didn't explain it already, I'll explain, like, cloning machines. You just have somebody that comes into the cloning machine. They stand, you press a button, then they step out of it, then there's a copy of them, and, like, that's it. They don't, take the body and, do whatever, because that's wrong. This is the ethical way to clone individuals, or ethically as they could make it, let's just say. Okay. So, to turning people into small midgets, like taking, people very, very big and turning them into very, very small. That's where they discovered something called hypnotism, where you sit in front of a, thing, and then the thing is, rolling around, and then you get hypnotized into, believing a certain thing, and having a certain mindset of getting brainwashed, and etc. They mastered the skill of hypnotizing as a means of convincing others to stay at their house and do exactly what they want. So when people would come, they would hypnotize them. That's what they would do, is they would hypnotize them, because not everybody's going to stay at their house. Like, they're going to go away because they're free, sovereign beings. So you have to get people to stay at the house. Because there were many rooms in the house, they would have many people staying with them. Education became the next thing as a matter of importance to them. The house was big enough where some of the rooms could be turned into classrooms to teach children. Instead of going to school, a great number of children living in Arizona came to their house and learned their lesson. Learned their education, like they learned things like math or whatever. Their house was big, but they needed a headquarters to manage the influx of people coming and going from their house. So the house wasn't enough. They needed a big headquarters. They needed a very, very big building. So they invested in builders to construct a massive building in Iowa, where I live. Yeah, it's in Arizona, but it's that gets too in the nitty gritty of it. You're just gonna have to trust me on this. It's a massive building in Iowa. Basically where I live, out into the south side of Iowa, in the middle of the countryside, in the middle of nowhere, where they had meeting rooms and big rooms where movies and presentations could go on. People would eventually manage people coming and going. Like, there would be managers and there would be officials that would dress in certain outfits, and it would be, deliver messages, like, literally in a, in a, like, a written out messenger, like, written out scroll or something like that they would deliver to the men. Like, these were the messengers, they were the officials. Like, people had to keep everyone informed. People had to keep officials. There had to be people to manage and run the Amenten, just like a government. This is like a government. And there were sub-governments. Like, you can think of this as a made-up government. Okay? Governments have officials and all these people to manage it. Like, this is the Capitol building of the Amenten. Okay, so if the Amenten was a country, this would be the Capitol building. Like, that's the metaphor of this whole entire thing. So I'm trying to make it as realistic and easy to understand as possible. Okay, I use that word people quite a bit. Good grief, some of them. Okay. So, people would eventually manage others coming and going. Some of them that came to Julia's house wanted to do the same thing as Julia. So started not only her Amenten, but others doing the same thing, me included in this. Me, myself, and I included in this. Inviting people to stay and get to know them in their houses. Eventually, they had to call it a name for inviting people to stay and getting to know them, where they would pay people to stay with them. They would pay others to just stay and live with them. That's what they would do. I want to hear your opinions about all this in the comments, and I'm really curious as to what you have to say about all this I'm presenting to you. It was the most random deal where Julia and Edward went to a hotel that had a window bench. Like, some hotels have like a bench that just sits by the window, like, attached to it. They looked at it, and the very, very first word that popped into Julia's mind, into my mind, was Amenten. Like Julia is me. I created Julia Esconroll. I played Julia Esconroll. So that's what you have to understand. This is all me. This is not separate from me. Okay? As I've stated at the beginning of this video. So, for some random reason, it felt right to call their business that. Now, Julia had many creative talents. She was a very, very creative person. She was a Leo sun, born July 24th, 1952, in Arizona. I think Phoenix, Arizona. So you can do your natal chart and look up her astrology with that. So she was a Leo sun, and she was definitely a Leo because I was a Leo at the time, because my progressed Saturn apparently was in Leo. But she was definitely a Leo. She sang, she acted, and did things that were in alignment with her own personal desires. She became interested in pageants and created something called pageantry ethos. ETHEISH. Now, these were not like the typical pageants. They were performers, but it happened to be called pageants. They wore dresses, they went places, they put on shows. That's what they did in their different costumes, their different outfits, and their different plot with the songs. They came to her house and they would go to fashion shows where they would walk on runways wearing certain clothes and dancing and showing their stuff. They did this in auditoriums, fashion shows, and even cruise ships, such as, and I based this off of Keeping Up Appearances when I watched the British comedy. Like a lot of this I based off of Hyacinth and Keeping Up Appearances. I don't want to go into that. There's just so much in this video to cover. But Hyacinth was vain. She had many, many creative aspects. In one of the episodes, she, was in the QE2, which is a cruise. The title for Amenten leaders. Let's define this here. Amenten leaders had names. The female Amenten leaders were known as Lebembis. Lebembies. Lebembis. And Lebembi Gross was the very, very first one. Lebemby. Lebembi Gross. That was her title. Like, teachers like to have Mr. something or other, or Doctor, or whatever. And Lopez's, which is kind of a word that I came up for someone being stupid or dumb. But anyway, Lopez's were male leaders. I was a Lopez. Lopez Leon. Took my middle name and reversed it. Lopez Leon. My middle name is Noah. The reverse of that is Leon. Some of the Amenten leaders, including myself, now I no longer do this anymore, but I will make a video about this because this is huge. This is very, very huge. Some of the Amenten leaders, including myself, are Lopez Leon, other Amenten leaders, Lebembi Belbuck, Lebembi Teleatok, or her name was Mary Sanchez for understandable name. Lebembi Thinginghausa, who didn't last the longest, Lebembi Grozier, and of course, Julia Eskenroll, whose title was Lebembi Growitz. I would be remiss if I didn't say the names for the Amenten leader were their middle names. That's what they are. Their middle names. And I just happened, Lopez Leon. I said Lopez Leon, but my middle name is Noel, and so my title would be Lopez Noel. So Julia Groeth Eskenroll. That's her full name, for instance. That means, Mary Teleatok Sanchez. That means that my middle name would be Noel, Julia yeah, so I covered that. They invited many guests from many different TV shows and movies. And I invited many, I don't want to go into those. From, the things that I watched as I grew up, I pretended to invite these guests into my Amenten and, invite them in and honor them. They found a way to bring fairies into their Amenten by going to Joka and creating them using the computer systems that were available. That these were magical computer systems. Like they took fairies from, you could have a movie playing and have a fairy from an animation movie or a live action movie, or a real face movie as I called it. They would take these from the movies and they would transfer them into real life, and they would actually be in real life. Now, there were several places that I'm going to delve into with this, that were Grampy Mill sales. And I'm not going to delve into the individual meanings of these cards, because that is for the Oracle deck. That is not for the purpose of this video. So you can find that if you were to purchase the Oracle deck, get the meanings from it, that's what they mean. I'm just giving you, this is about the Amenten in general. This is, again, kind of a dry informational episode, but this is not based on fact. This is the real me. This is something I came up with. So anyway, just know that. Grampy Mill Sales, which was a place where you would be in a boat and sail around to different places that were created. I'll get into that later. Do on Do's, which was a restaurant atop a hill outside of Iowa, which was a very grand and very expensive, and having a room dedicated to parties with a TV inside it. Like there would be one room in this place where it would be like a party room, like a big table and a TV in there. Tutalus. 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 Was a store selling everything from beds and pillows, like Bed Bath & Beyond kind of thing, to hardware supply tools. So a functional store. Julia Esconroll also had a joking cooking show called Gross Wound. And in joking, wound is how you say hello and goodbye. You're thinking, that is weird. Because wound is like like you get a wound, like you get hurt. But no, this is wound. This is how I came up with it, is Gross Wound. That was the name of the cooking show. Where she would say, until I see you, India Gatto again, I'm Gross Wound. Like, I based it off of Ciao Italia. Like, that's how I based this show off of, was watching Ciao Italia and Marina Esposito. Which I have, not going to get into that, because I don't do that anymore. So, anyway, where she would prepare, joking dishes and travel to places in Joka. That was the main source of income that the Amenten got. The Toodaloos was the main source of income. The store gave them money. Now, the railroad house was also something that had trains, like an indoor railroad house with trains in it, with trains, moving about. Both life-size and miniature would ride around the place. More places kept getting formed, and the Amenten realm still continues to be in effect today, although I am no longer involved in the Amenten because I retired from the Amenten. I disincluded myself from the Amenten officially at the very, very end of 2024. I had made-up reasons for that, and I actually show evidence of this because there's videos on my channel and other accounts that I'm going to link that are like this. You can go see those archive videos for that. How to use the oracle. We do not need to know about all of that. Okay, now we're getting into the specifics. Ooh, this is going to be long. Okay, so I may have to pause during this. I don't know how long this will be because there's a lot of cards in this, and I'm getting into the specifics thing of this. I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to make separate parts to this because this is a lot. This is a very, very long episode, and I will not be able to get this all covered in one whole podcast episode. Otherwise, it will be many, many hours. So I'm going to have to do this in parts. So this is part one. This is the backstory of the Amenten. I'll just call it that and then move on to part two because this is already long enough and I didn't want to bore you and I didn't want this to be overly long. I just feel like I cannot do the whole thing in one whole sitting. No, it's just way too much. There's a lot here that I have to get through. So, that's it for now and I will see you, in the next part.